We tell ourselves a simple geographic story about global success. A talented individual leaves the periphery, travels to the center of the world, and reaps the rewards. But that map is broken. The modern world does not operate with a fixed center and a distant margin. Power is now organized as an empire, a decentralized, fluid network of capital that spans the globe without allegiance to any single nation-state. This map illustrates the new geography. Lahore, Princeton, Wall Street, and Manila are no longer distinct worlds. They are interconnected nodes on a single grid. Moving between these hubs is systemic circulation. Capital opens frontiers to whoever navigates its flow. Mira Nair's 2012 film adaptation of The Reluctant Fundamentalist provides a precise study of how this system manages human capital. The film tracks how global power identifies cultural fluency, extracts value from it, and violently polices it the moment a threat is perceived. The protagonist's trajectory is a structural simulation of geopolitical forces, mapping exactly what happens when the global economy turns on its most successful subjects. Changez is an elite product of this system. He occupies what cultural theorist Homi Bhabha calls a third space, possessing a fluency that allows him to navigate distinct cultural codes with ease. The elite valuation firm Underwood Sampson does not value this hybridity as a social virtue. They recognize it strictly as a highly profitable corporate asset, a tool to smooth over the friction of international acquisitions. Nair communicates this integration visually. Changez dominates the corporate environment, shot with a confident stride and positioned squarely within Wall Street's cold blue architecture. This professional command breaks down in his romantic relationship. Nair isolates him and his American partner through soft focus and spatial distance, signaling a complete failure of cultural intimacy outside the boardroom. Under the modern empire, hybridity is celebrated on a strictly conditional basis. You're welcome inside the network exactly as long as you are useful to the market. The corporate mandate handed to Changez is simple: focus on the fundamentals. Economist Joseph Stiglitz provides the framework to understand this command. It is a form of market fundamentalism, an ideological extreme that systematically strips away human complexity, history, and cultural nuance, leaving only profit margins and valuation metrics. This ideology permeates the film's visual design. The corporate spaces are built of glass, steel, and relentless forward motion. Nair sets this cold geometric efficiency against the textured, static warmth of Lahore, establishing a stark dichotomy between pure economic calculus and lived culture. Changez internalizes this tabulus. The demands of valuation physically overwrite his native identity, reshaping his posture, his speech, and his loyalties. The conflict peaks in Istanbul. Here, the immense weight of historical culture is placed directly onto the chopping block of corporate commodification. Long before any geopolitical crisis, the cosmopolitan subject is already trapped inside a fundamentalist system engineered purely for economic extraction. The attacks of September 11th do not interrupt globalization from the outside. They act as a traumatic catalyst, activating the empire's latent defense mechanisms. This historical trauma triggers an immediate structural stress test, instantly shattering the privileged third space that Changez occupied. Returning to our network map, we see the fluid, open nodes of the global economy abruptly harden into rigid, exclusionary security borders. These borders converge inward, specifically targeting and quarantining hybrid subjects, trapping them inside the very system that previously empowered them. Cultural theorist Edward Said identified this mechanism as reorientalism, a swift, aggressive racialization where physical bodies are suddenly read through a lens of suspicion. The exact cultural markers that Underwood Sampson celebrated as corporate assets, Changez's Pakistani origin and Muslim identity, are instantly reclassified as geopolitical threats. Nair reflects this through a sharp cinematic shift, replacing the expansive, confident shots of New York with claustrophobic framing and cold, desaturated colors. The empire's command network manifests physically at the security checkpoint, followed by sudden, aggressive social isolation in public spaces. Pervasive surveillance rapidly corrodes his professional utility, triggering the systemic collapse of his Wall Street career. The crisis proves that the global economy's tolerance for diversity is conditional. When threatened, the system weaponizes identity to police its frontiers. The film anchors the structural collapse in its frame narrative, set entirely in a Lahore cafe where Changez recounts his story. He sits across the table from an American journalist. Nair overlays their intimate dialogue with a heavy atmosphere of permanent mutual suspicion, captured in the tense negative space between them. This setup plays on the central deception of the title. The film never portrays Changez converting to religious extremism. Instead, he becomes a fundamentalist purely through his absolute, unyielding rejection of the market's fundamentalism. This resistance is communicated not through explosive confrontation, but through subdued, deliberate performance choices. We see it in his calculated pauses, averted gazes, and quiet, non-aggressive posturing, a physical withdrawal from the system's demands. This quiet reluctance contrasts sharply with the American journalist's ambiguous motives, which embody the lingering, omnipresent threat of imperial violence. Nair deliberately refuses to provide a neat resolution. She leaves the encounter suspended, denying the audience a comforting space for East-West reconciliation. Genuine dialogue remains structurally impossible when it must be conducted under conditions of profoundly unequal power and constant surveillance. This leaves a final analytical question. Is the protagonist a passive victim of global capital or an active figure of resistance? He is certainly a victim. The racialized reclassification of his body inflicts severe, systemic destruction on his professional and emotional life. Yet he achieves agency precisely by refusing to remain inside the economic logic that structurally damaged him. Resistance here is not spectacular militant action. It is a quiet, ethical, and political withdrawal from the machinery of corporate valuation. His physical return to Lahore to serve as a university teacher manifests this theoretical refusal in the real world. True resistance within a decentred global empire rarely looks heroic. Most often, it takes the form of simply saying no to further extraction. Changez operates as a complex subject produced entirely by global power, who retains the intellectual agency to turn against its dehumanizing demands. Nair's adaptation proves that cinematic fiction remains a critical site for analysis. It is where abstract geopolitical theories of borders, capital, and empire become deeply, undeniably human.